Thank you. Happy birthday, Ringwood. Amazing. And I'd like to thank Tim, wherever he is, for asking me to share tonight. It is a privilege to be able to share in a meeting. I don't really feel like that right now. I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack any minute. And I was thinking earlier today, when I first came into the meetings and I'd see people sitting up here doing that, I was like, I'm not doing that. And when I was first asked to share, I'd be planning it for a couple of weeks and I would be consumed with it. And now it's just, I sit down in this chair and it hits me like a sledgehammer. But it is a privilege because I've got a message to carry. When I came in here into these rooms, I was a wreck. I first came into these rooms in 99. I came down here for treatment and I loved drinking, I loved taking drugs. I didn't realise that I had a problem with that. I kind of hung around with a group of people that did the same thing, so to me it was normal. And as my using progressed, my friends changed. I always sought out people worse than me so that I looked like I wasn't quite so bad as everyone else. And I didn't know that I had an illness. I just thought I was having a laugh and I wasn't particularly down with what I was taught at school or by my parents, or I just wanted to go out and party. And that's kind of how I rolled. And I loved it. If I'm honest, I loved those first few years until it started to take over. It started to get in the way of jobs, relationships. It started to rule my life. And that was when, I guess, heroin came onto the scene for me, is when it started to go wrong. And for me, I was very, very careful getting into heroin because there was lots of addicts around me and I wasn't going to be one of them. I was above that. So I'd only use at weekends and I'd drink like a fish all week. So therefore I had a problem with neither. And I was very controlled around it for quite a long period of time. It would only be the weekends. I only took ease so that I could take heroin to come down. Just mental stuff when I look back at it. And those weekends got longer. And then all of a sudden I'm there with a problem and it's just like, oh my God, how did that happen? Because I seemed to exercise so much control. And to cut a long story short, I worked in pubs and it kind of, I started to get found out. The lies started to fall apart around me and people could see what I really was, and I didn't like that. I wanted people to think that I was a nice person, not a scummy junkie, which is what I was at the end of the day. And I went to my GP and they sent me to the local drug services who sent me into treatment. And I did my primary treatment and they removed all the drugs from my system and it was great, everything was sorted. And then they sent me down to Bournemouth for a bit more treatment. And I really had absolutely no idea why I was in another treatment centre. I thought I was okay. And I signed these rules. It's like, yeah, that's fine. And within a week, I was in an SR. I was lying about it. Everyone knew about it. The counsellors knew about it. I got pulled on it eventually. And I was fuming because he'd owned it and I was left looking like a fool. And my counsellor said to me at the time, how do you feel? And I wanted to go and use. I felt so ashamed and so unable to cope with what I was feeling. I just wanted to go and use, and that was the first inkling I had that my behaviour could take me back to using. So from then on, I kind of looked at the people around me, and you could have loads of treatment when I was in treatment. There was unlimited funding. People were in treatment centres for a year. There was no way I was spending a year in a treatment centre. It was just too abnormal. So I was in there for 6 months, and I thought, after this incident, if I comply, I'll be out in the wide world quicker. And I went to above and beyond meetings, because we had to do 3 a week. I'd be doing 5 or 6, but I was doing 5 or 6 to see what men were available. It wasn't anything to do with what we actually do here. And I graduated from treatment, and I went to meetings. I didn't do what you guys suggest we do. And I got into another relationship. I ended up getting pregnant within a few months of being with this guy that I was in treatment with. And it was a different one from the SR, so I've moved on. And in my mind, I was going to be on my own for a year. But I was just, you put the drugs down, and I'm just grabbing at whatever else I can to make me feel okay. And so I was seeing this guy, and I ended up pregnant, and he ended up going out for a social drink, which he's never been able to do, or that my experience of him doing that at that point in time, it went horribly wrong. And he ended up using, and I picked up as well, because I truly believed that I never had a problem with alcohol and smoking puff. I absolutely, in my heart, believed that. And I'd listened to you guys in the meeting, and my case was different. So I had a drink, and I had a joint, and I left it alone after that for a few weeks. Then I had then I got really drunk, and I left it alone again for a week, because this is Christmas, New Year. I nearly tipped the baby out the pram, because I'd had the baby by then. And I was rude to everyone we were with. I was down in Somerset, and they were all his friends. I'm surprised I didn't get a slap. I was absolutely vile. I'm not a nice drinker. And and then I had another few drinks New Year's Eve, and I'm in control, right? I'm absolutely in control. I am not like you guys. And I had, you need to stop me if I'm going on too much, Toby, because I'm on a roll now.
Oh, you got time.
By the time my eldest daughter was 5 months old, I said to myself, right, I need some heroin. How can I manipulate him, because he was already using by this point, to get me some, so that if it goes wrong, it's his fault. And that's what I did. I spent the next 18 months blaming him for my using. And the reality was, I was using because I didn't work this program, and I was an addict of the type that it talks about in the book. And so I spent another 18, 19 months dragging myself around Boscombe, picking up fag butts off the floor, scavving 20p. I don't even know how much the phone is now, but it was like, can you give me 20p for the phone box? It was horrendous. And there is nothing worse than going back out there using when you've got a head full of this stuff. I was not using in ignorance anymore. And I'd use, and the voice would go, you don't need to be doing this, Vicky. And it didn't matter how much I used. The more I used, the louder that voice got. And I can remember someone saying to me, that's why people die, because they can't shut the noise. You know, the drugs weren't working for me anymore. And then I was stuck in this hell. It was vile. And then I had social services in my life, and I was really, really lucky. Social services got involved in my life when I was willing to play the game that social services want you to play. And I used that to my advantage, and I got into the drug services down here. I went into the local detox, which no longer exists. And in my mind, I was still, just before I was going into detox, I'll drink when I go home and visit home. When my mind cleared, I could see that that was madness. And I came out of the detox, and I got a sponsor, and I got in with what you guys tell me to do. And I believed at my core that I am an addict of the type that it talks about in the book. And I went through the steps, and I did whatever my sponsor suggested I did without argument, because I was absolutely terrified of going back to what I'd just come from. And, and I've had an amazing life as a result of taking the steps and putting into action what this programme gives us and getting involved in what we do here. And it's been amazing. I've got 3 amazing kids. They're doing really well. And I've had my fears around, oh, she's smoking pot and doing this and doing that. And there's a part of me, actually, if the truth be known, that I'm envious of that, because she's all right. She doesn't think like me, and she's doing really well at college. And I've put a lot of work into my kids. I've tried really hard to be a good mum. I've got a job, you know, I work. I'm a productive member of society, and I'm not able to do that stuff. You know, the jobs that I had before, I was robbing out the till and I was smoking heroin in the toilets, and, you know, and as it went on, you know, by the time I was in Boscombe, I was using crack and heroin together, intravenously. And that was my thing. And it was just scummy. It was awful. But as a result of taking these steps, I've been given a life. I've been given you know, I used to drink because it gave me confidence. I was really awkward and shy, and it gave me confidence. That stopped working, and the drugs stopped working, and slowly the steps have given me what the bottle and the drugs gave me. And I'll finish on this, you know, I've been putting the actions in, day out, year out, reading the book, doing what I need to do in order to stay in the game. And a few months ago, something happened in my life where someone close to me decided they could have a drink again. And I'm kind of got to a place now, possibly about 2-3 weeks ago, I was kind of like, I had a proper meltdown about it, and I said how I felt and all that stuff. It's spun me on my head. It's made me question whether I really am. You know, I've just told you my story, and I can still get into a place where I will question whether I'm like you guys. And I was talking to my husband about it the other day, and I said, you know, how come all of a sudden you're not a drug addict, but I am still? Because I've looked at it every which way I can. Oh, well, I'll have a drink. I don't even want to drink. I don't like alcohol. What my head will go, oh, I'll have a puff. But even if I think, oh, I'll have a drink, in my mind, playing that forward, because my thinking will play it forward, it's just disaster, it's carnage. I'm not like that. I am the real McCoy, and it's been quite scary that my mind has got that power to take me out the door. And I'm really grateful to the people that I've got around me. I've got a few people close to me. I've got a sponsor that I can go to and talk to. And I think if I hadn't had those people and I haven't voiced the stuff that I voiced in particular to my sponsor, I would have gone, without doubt, and keep putting these actions in. And I know no matter what, as long as I'm doing what I need to do, I'll be all right. And I also know no matter what, I am not going to be taken down by anyone else's addiction. It's not happening. You know, I wasn't like that in the beginning. I was desperate. You've got to love me. Whatever it takes, you know, whatever you do to me, I will love you. I'm not that girl anymore. I've grown up. I've grown as a result of taking these steps, and I am not going down for anyone else. Not a chance. I've got an amazing life as a result of what I found in these rooms, and I'll leave it there. Thanks for letting me share.
And that leads me to introduce Lewis, if you're happy to go next.
Yep. My name's Lewis. I'm an addict.
Hi, Lewis.
Thanks, Vicky, for your share. When you started to say I'm finishing, my heart started to beat like fast and hard, like, because I haven't really thought about it much today. I've been under a house working, literally, and I kind of thought about it, but then I was busy running around like a bit of a maniac today, and then now the heart, I'm just with it right now. It's going to pass very soon, but it's always that bit when you start that the heart starts to go, and then it's going to go away, and then I'll be on the roll just like you were. But yeah, 10 years is a great thing, you know, for a meeting, especially one out here and near enough to sticks. You know what I mean? You know, it's just a few of us. There's not many of us. It's been my home group for about 6 years, I think. something like that. Since I got back from travelling, I travelled for about a year, and I got back and I come here. And you know, I really liked. I don't know what it, you know. It's just the unity of the place and the vibe I get here. You know, that I've kept coming back. You know, it's my home group, and in your home you're supposed to feel comfortable. You know. In that time, it hasn't all gone smoothly. You know, in that time, I think I've been voted out of a couple of commitments. And my pride has been hurt, and I've stormed out the meeting.
Walk out to no applause.
Yeah. No applause. Come back the next week with my towel between my legs. Because I'm a human, I'm not a robot. You know what I mean? And as a human, I make mistakes. A lot of mistakes, you know. And yeah, sometimes, you know, you gotta be, you know, open enough to learn by your mistakes, because that's where I've learnt the most in my recovery. In everything, in my job, I've learnt by flooding out kitchens, literally. Like, I've learnt by making mistakes with people and you know, whatever it may be. Because when you go to do that again, you think, oh, hold on a minute. Last time I did that, like, I'm a plumber, so my very first job, I cut through a pipe and I flooded someone's kitchen, yeah? So when I went to do another job, I thought, oh, I better not cut through that pipe. I better make sure the water's off first. And then I did. I turned the water off, I cut it and no leaks. You know, so like I've tried to do that in my recovery with different things, and eventually it's worked. So I might have made a mistake a few times. Like it says, you know, I touched the hot stove a couple of times before I realised it's going to burn my hand. And yeah, so anyway, you know, I was using from a young age, when I was kind of 12, 13, 14. My mum and dad were very young when I was born, so I used to watch them drink and get ready to go out, you know what I mean? Which looks really appealing, you know, because they'd play music, kind of 90s, early 90s, late 80s stuff, and they'd be getting dressed and, you know, drinking, and it looks really fun, you know. I just wanted to do it, you know. There'd be all this like music, and my mum's friends would come round, and yeah, I just wanted to drink. It looked like people that drunk had a really good time, you know. And that's what I did at the first opportunity. I drank my mum's vodka, and I filled it back up with water, and I was surprised that she knew it was filled, you know, that I couldn't believe how she would know, you know. I didn't think she would know. Anyway, I drank it, and I just felt that warm glow go down my chest, you know what I mean? And I just felt great, you know. I just felt, you know, I'll give me this really good feeling. And you know, it's the same with puff. They used to smoke puff, and I'd see them smoking it around the table. Me and my mates used to chop a little bit off, you know, about that much, and we'd go away and smoke it, and we'd do buckets with the older boys, and you know, we would just, when we'd smoke it, we'd absolutely just in hysterical laughing. Like we would be falling over, holding us like 12, 13 years old, just hysterically laughing. Eating loads of cookies. It was. We used to go and rob cookies from the car, right? You know, just eat them and get stoned. You know, that was, instead of going to school, that's what we did. And at the time, I didn't really realise what we was doing. I might add, my mum was an alcoholic, so I would come home from school, my mum would be drunk. So it didn't matter what I did. Like, she wouldn't tell me off. You know, the only person who did was my dad, and he didn't live there. So in the end, I used to come home and watch my mum be paralytic, do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't even ask if I could stay out, I would just go. And I was like 13, 14. It just went from there, you know, me and my friends would all do it, and we would just go up to different kind of things, and ecstasy and speed. And I remember this one time, I knew this is when I was different, because it was a Sunday night, and we'd be up And I said to my mates, right, let's go out and get some more money and let's go and get some more gear. And two of my mates said, no, I've got college tomorrow. Can't. That was it. And I just was like I couldn't believe it. Like, why you would want to go to college, you know what I mean? When we could go out and rob car stereos, sell them for like 20, 30 quid, and go and get some more speed, and sit up all night in the house and not leave. Like, I couldn't understand why they wouldn't want to do that. Right? But that's the nature of the beast, you know. That's because I'm an addict of the hopeless kind, you know. I will get in use no matter what. And that's what I did through my teens, why my brothers and my friends were going to college and getting their like apprenticeships and getting their driving license. I was fine getting in using and you know, doing things that like whatever I had to do, you know, breaking into things and stealing off my family, hurting my family and hurting my loved ones around me. That's basically what I was doing. And you know, I was just in and out. I was in and out of jail. You know, literally, I was such a hopeless addict. You know, I would get out of jail one day and I would get nicked the same night, and I'd be going straight back there the next day. And the embarrassment and the demoralisation of going back to the same jail you just got out of. It just used to kill me. You know, I was just hopeless at it. I couldn't even go and sign on. I was that kind of useless, you know, and it just got to the point where I was in there again, and I was 19. I was on heroin, and I would get out, and the only place I could sleep was on the train. In Portsmouth, the train stopped there, and they don't go any further. And I would climb over the fence and I'd sleep on it because it wouldn't move until 7 in the morning, until I'd get kicked off of it. But I'd wake up and I'd do my gear on the train in the morning. 17, 18 years old. I'd wake up and I'd smoke heroin on the train. That's how it had become. And I got to this place, and this guy said, "Are you tired of coming in and out of here? Would you want to go and do something about it?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." And I'd done this course in there, and then cut a long story short, I ended up in Bournemouth in a treatment centre. I was 19. And then I couldn't understand the concept. You know, I didn't realise what was wrong with me. You know, I didn't realise that I suffered with what we suffer with. You know, the mental obsession, the spiritual malady. You know, the obsession of the mind. I just didn't understand. You know, the illness that I suffered with. I just thought if I stayed away from heroin and crack cocaine, I could drink and use like other 19-year-olds. You know. And that's what I tried to do, and each time I just ended up worse and worse and worse. So I think 4 treatment centres later, and I was 25, and I've been using again. And I had a moment of clarity, you know. And I the same guy that I used to use with, I saw him, and he was worse than me. You know what I mean? He was fucked. Excuse my language. And I haven't seen him for years, and I see him in this treatment centre, and he just looked incredible, you know. He just looked amazing. I couldn't believe my eyes. You know what I mean? I thought I was like seeing a mirage of someone I used to know, and it was him. Like the Ebby and Bill moment. It's like, I got God. I was like, what? I wasn't quite like that. But he had been doing the 12 steps basically, and right there and then I asked him to be my sponsor. Because I knew if it could work for this guy, it could definitely work for me. You know what I mean? And he just told me, he just said, all right, get that book, turn up at my house every week, and we'll go through the steps. And I just thought, oh, how is this going to help me? You know what I mean? I was thinking afterwards, like, how was this going to this man's house with this book every week? I was just thinking, no, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to help me. But I ain't got anything else to do, you know what I mean? I ain't got a job, I ain't got nothing, so I went there. And we started to go through the work, and the lights come on. You know, the penny dropped. I realised that any time I put one thing inside of me, whatever it may be, whether I take a drink, a pint, whatever it is, I'll be off and running, and I won't stop until I get what I need to get. You know, so it was just like that, and I was like, that's it, that's why. And since then I've never used, and I was 25 and I'm 36. So I'm nearly 12 years clean. And within that time, you know, I believe, for me, you know, it's all down, for me, I'd relapsed before. I had a year, I had a few months. For me, it's only down to working the 12 steps in Cocaine Anonymous, for me. There might be other ways, I don't know. I'm not willing to try, you know what I mean? Because, like what you said, the life it's given me today is beyond what I could have ever imagined, you know. I was using when I was at school. I didn't even do my exams in school, you know what I mean? When everyone was sitting the exams, I wasn't there. And by doing this basic stuff, you know, working through the steps, I've always had a home group. I've always had a commitment at a home group. I've always had a sponsor, and I sponsored people when I went through the 12 steps. I went through the traditions as well, twice. And by doing that, I didn't build a life back. I built a life, because I didn't have a life in the first place, really. You know what I mean? All the things that I never did, like I took my driving test, took my driving lessons, and took my test. I went to college, not back. I went to college to study to be a plumber, as I said, because I flooded someone's kitchen, which was difficult. But you know, because I left school and I went back and I did it. I got a passport. And when I was using, I never left the same place. I never left that place, you know what I mean? I never even went. The only holiday we had was to the Isle of Wight, you know, which if you know Portsmouth is on a hovercraft, back and forward, you're there in 5 minutes, you know what I mean? That's the only holiday we had. And you know, just it's just incredible, like what you can achieve here, you know. All the things that I never thought I could do, you know, and sometimes I hear people say when I got clean, my life got worse. Do you know what I mean? For me, that's not the case, you know. As soon as I got clean and sober, my life instantly improved. Yeah, whether sometimes I'd rest on my laurels or not. Yeah, from sleeping on the train and taking heroin to maybe sometimes resting on my laurels and having a spiritual malady. I'll take that any day over that. Do you know what I mean? How am I doing for time, Todd?
Oh, if you wanted, you could have 7 minutes.
Oh, I'll give you 7 minutes of the. So in that time, I've managed to do things, travel. I've travelled half the world. I've never really come close to temptation, apart from once or two times. I was in Thailand, and I'd been there for nearly a year, right? I've been in Asia for nearly a year, all over the place. And I'd met this Swedish girl, and we went back to, you know, as you do. We went back to where she stayed, and she said, "Would you like to have a drink and take some MDMA with me?" And I was like, And I swear to God, for 30 seconds I considered it. Yeah. I thought, wow. You know, if I take that, she might want to stay with me. Do you know what I mean? Because I thought, if I don't take it, she's going to think I'm really boring. Then I thought, if I end up using it in Thailand, I don't think I'm going to come back. You know? So within that 30 seconds, I'd weighed it all up, and I just said, no, I'm all right. And like, she liked me even more for being clean and sober, you know? And I stayed with her and travelled around Asia a bit with her, you know, just a normal person. Like I had such an amazing experience, you know. We used to have a meeting in this temple every Wednesday and Saturday, you know. There's only a few people there. This old guy, Frank, like, he's been there for years, he's 20 odd years clean, but he showed up every week, you know, whether people were there or not. You know what I mean? And I did meetings there. Wherever I've been, I went to a meeting in Rio de Janeiro. I found the meeting there, an AA meeting, and I couldn't really understand that much, but I was there. Do you know what I mean? It kept me going, and you know, it's just amazing things we can all achieve if you put in the work, you know, and because throughout this time, in this 12 years, I've always I've always come to my home group, you know. I mean, unless I'm away, I've always come to my home group. I've always had a sponsor, always. You know, even when I was travelling, I'd Skype him or I'd send him a message or something. I would always help people. I'd always sponsor people, and a lot of it is for me as well. I think because, excuse my French, but because it was so shit out there when I was using. I don't know. It gives me this extra enthusiasm for life. You know what I mean? Because I never had a good life. You know what I mean? I never had a good life for a very, very long time. You know, from the age of like 12, 13 until 25, it was just horrible. You know, I watched people, friends from where I'm from, overdose and die, and that's not gonna happen to me. You know, so for me to consider to have a drink or to take something is to die. You know what I mean? And I've been there in Boscombe. Yeah, I've used in Boscombe. It is very degrading, you know, demoralising. You know what I mean? But I will end up back there quickly. You know, I've got a few things around me today, so it might take a bit longer than it did last time. But I will be there, trust me. And if I see you, I'd probably ask to lend £1 or 20p. You know, I don't know how much the phone box is either these days, but I'll guarantee I will ask you. And I'll just finish on this. If there's anybody new here, you know, you need to get a sponsor and you need to work the steps. It's the only way. If there's somebody here that's like been around a few years and you're not doing a lot and you hit some brick walls, you know, you need to start putting in some action again. You know, I've been like that. I've like I said, I've rested on my laurels and I've found myself in the spiritual malady a few times, you know. But I very quickly get out of it. You know what I mean? And it's been great to be at this home group. You know, I believe in higher power. I believe in this program of Cocaine Anonymous, and may I be here for another 12 years. You know what I mean? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Nice one, Lewis. And finally, I'd like to introduce Nicole.
Thanks. I'm Nicole, I'm an addict.
Nicole.
It's nice to be here. Thanks, Tim, for asking. It's great to be here to celebrate the birthday, 10 years of the Ringwood meeting. It's nice to be here and see some old faces and new. And I like it that we are experiencing and creating history together. And, you know, I love it that I'm actually creating some positive history, because all of my past history was pretty miserable. And I feel at home here. I feel uncomfortable right now, but I feel at home here. And what I can pretty much guarantee is, with all of you here, whether I've known you for years or I've never met you before, if we spoke within a couple of minutes, we could have a connection. I can pretty much guarantee that, and I think it's a blessing, and it's an amazing thing that we can experience together, which your average Joe Blogs doesn't get. And there's a woman at my work she's leaving and she's moving away, and you know, we were talking about, gosh, what on earth would you do to meet people, what you're going to do to sort of, you know, have anyone around you. And what I love is I could go anywhere and I could have people around me and feel connection like that. It's amazing, it's awesome. And here together we are experiencing and creating some history together. So there's parts of my story which a few of you will relate to. There's parts of it that many of you won't. There's, you know, my upbringing. Some of you would relate, some of you wouldn't. But what I can safely say is, if you're here because you're a drug addict, we can relate on that. When I was growing up, I was an extreme individual, but when I was younger it was for sports. I was very extreme in sports all the time. I was doing it all the time, whether it was before school, after school, in the mornings, at the weekends, during the day. I was competing, I was training, any of it. And it was in a very addictive manner. And I was applauded, and it was celebrated, and I was supported and encouraged, and it was, you know, it was a great thing. And but whatever it is within my personality, even though all of that felt amazing, it was amazing. I have such great memories of it. I reached a place where all of that great feelings, all of a sudden was just not enough. It just was not hitting my sweet spot. And I'd gone from obsessively training to nothing. I was done with it. And so I'd gone from being at the peak of fitness, aged 15, you know, the machine, to smoking fags, quickly smoking weed, speed, ease, you know, and the progression was quick, and I loved every moment of it, absolutely every moment of it. Every new drug that I experienced, I loved, except acid. Oh. And I could actually leave that alone. So I'm not sure why I'm here, to be honest. Yeah, I just wasn't a fan of acid at all, so I just left it alone. Although weirdly, I wasn't really much of a fan of speed, but I did quite a lot of that, so I'm not quite sure it's not quite marrying up. But anyway, I was my most content being the one in a club, in the corner, rolling my eyes into the top of my head. That was the ideal position. It didn't matter what was on the floor for me to be sat there. That's where I was, either there or in the toilet trying to wee for hours. Shivering and God knows what. They were my general favourite positions. So when I was 16, I met a fella who was 34, which I find repulsive right now, but at the time I thought he was the most amazing thing in the world, because he walked into the room with a bag full of drugs and a roll of money, and I thought, I like the look of you. So you know, we sort of, you know, we met, and I was 16 at the time, and he was basically, I grew up in this little town of not a lot, and he was like the town dealer, and me and my brother drove him home, so I knew where he lived from that point on. So then I passed my driving test at 17, and all of a sudden thought it'd be a good idea to pop round there, just on the off chance. Oh, you remember me? And probably a couple of weeks later I'd moved in and started taking heroin. No, actually that's a lie. Started my crack relationship. And before I was 18, I was addicted to heroin. So it's a real sort of, it had gone from an amazing, you know, I did well at school, I was confident at school, apart from with boys, because you're all a bit, I don't know what. But otherwise, I was pretty confident, I was outgoing, I was fine. You know, I was really sporty, so no one messed with me, I was never bullied or any of that stuff. To, within the space of a couple of years, to being a junkie. And throughout that time, the reality of it is I had some amazing times. I had some of the best times of my life, you know, drugs was in abundance. I've never experienced anything like it since, and all being well, I never again will. But I've also had some of the worst times of my life, because it turns out that relationship ended up being savagely violent, And I went from being the most confident and outgoing girl to having all of that pretty much beaten out of me, whether that was through drugs or violence. And within all of that, my family watched their amazing daughter go from being this, outgoing girl to somebody who would regularly return battered and bruised one day, full of woe, and within a couple of hours, if I started feeling ill again or whatever it was, I'd go back. So what on earth that was like for them, I just have no idea. I never want to experience it at all with my children, that's for sure.
Sorry.
It's all right. So yes, by 18, thankfully, and the truth of it is he ends up in prison. To all you dealers out there, my hat goes off to you, because I was not able to do that at all. So I was left with the family business, and the truth of it is people would come knocking on the door for said business, and I would hide. Because I don't want you to have it. Very short-sighted, I'm aware. But that was the truth, because I couldn't stop taking that. I couldn't, that was mine. Come on, have it. So by 18, I was doing my first detox. It was a home detox. I'd told my family about it all, and I tried to do a home detox, and I genuinely thought, let's get this stuff out of my system. I too will be able to have a drink, smoke, puff, all of that sort of stuff. It'll be fine. And so following the detox, and it was horrible, anybody who's done a detox, I'm sure many of you have, it's not a nice experience, but a few days afterwards, and I start to feel a little bit better again, all of a sudden I think, I'm just see if I can do it once. I'm just going to go and do it the once, that's it, no more. Obviously I won't do it any more than that. So I went to my dealer's house, and I think every town's got one. She was like this older woman who everyone would go to for like health advice and stuff. Do you know what I mean? She's like this sort of hippie, face all picked to shreds, but she's like the one, she's the dealer, she can just about manage, but you'll go there, and Yvonne she was called, and she's a bit witchy, but can give you sort of tips for ailments and stuff. And I went to her and I was like, can you serve me up today, but if I come back tomorrow, please don't, because I don't want to go back to it. I just want to do it at once, and with the expectation that somebody's going to do that. And I use the once, and then the next day I want to do it again, and then it's obviously you can't do the more than 3 days in a row, the 3-day rule, but I can't manage it. So I've just experienced a detox. It was horrible. I was the first person in my little town to go to the doctor for an opiate detox. He'd never experienced it before. I'm just this horrible, evil person. I've let my family down. I've let everyone down. I've done this detox, which was horrendous. I hated it. And then 2 weeks afterwards, I'm right back where I was, thinking, well, how on earth did that happen? And the truth of it is I could give you any number of stories like that. I've done multiple detoxes, I've done multiple rehabs, and every single time I thought I could do it just once and I'll be fine. Every single time. It didn't matter how many experiences I'd had, that's what happened. And I would do it the once, and then I'd be right back there, every time getting worse and worse and worse. until I end up in a position where I can't use without fitting. I'm IV using cocaine, crack and heroin at the same time, and every single time I use, I fit. And I loved it, which is mad. It was a joy when I first went over, which is mad. I can't get with when I try and recall some of my mindset and describe it to you now, I find it hard to believe that I was that person. I cannot believe I thought I'd arrived because I'd had a drug overdose. I can't believe I was impressed that I would crack fit all the time. I don't get it. I don't understand it anymore. And the lies that came out of my mouth was just relentless. Anything I could do to get out of trouble, anything. From ringing up I tried to work, I was working at Butlins in Bognor, and in the call centre booking holidays, and they were the first place to sort of try and offer me some support. And I think they were a bit suspect when they found me in the toilet out of it, and I said, and I was about 2 hours late in, and went straight into the toilet and was out of it. And I said to them, I'm really sorry, my auntie has been murdered. My cousin witnessed it, and that's why I'm late. I'm really sorry. I'm just a bit upset. I'm just going to sit in here for a bit. I thought the worse the lie, the more believable it would be. They offered me help. Don't know why. Anyway, so all of these treatment centres and blah, 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 blah. The last place I used was in a treatment centre in Bournemouth. I tried my hardest to get into this treatment centre. I jumped through some hoops to get funding. The hoops were burning, and I jumped through them to get into this treatment centre. And I'd had this, I'd been on Subutex for ages and all of that sort of stuff. And I just had the weirdest mindset, because it was going to be the last day of my detox. So I thought, well, tomorrow will be my clean time birthday, first day. So I might as well have a use up today. And went and had a use up, went back into these, it was like a treatment centre with attached dry houses. Went back there and got kicked out the next day. But I've never used again. I've never used again since. And the difference was CA at that point was on fire. It was awesome. It was up there. Everybody was shouting recovery from the rooftops. It's gone, the first time I met Lewis, there was one meeting of CA in Bournemouth, and it was just
bad.
Yeah, gangsters only were allowed in there. Obviously why I was in there. And me. But then throughout my journey, CA was then on fire. Just recovery was just being screamed from the rooftops. Everybody was on it. It was really it wasn't just about going and sitting in a meeting and, the amount of times I've come to meetings throughout my journey prior to being actually in recovery, and I've done the main share, having never worked a step in my life. Sponsoring people being sponsored by people who've not finished the steps themselves, it was all just, but anyway, by this point, recovery is being shouted out loud and proud, and I was blessed to have gone into that treatment centre, and I got a sponsor whilst I was in there in preparation for when I came out. And so although I got kicked out, what my usual pathway would have been, I would have rung up my mum and dad and gone, I'm in trouble, help me, or whatever it would have been. But none of that was working, none of it was working, and I'd reached a place where I was done. And that last £10 bag absolutely brought me to my knees. Of all the money that I've spent on drugs in the past, it was that last tenner that broke me, and I was done. And I felt like every bit of anything inside of me was on the floor, buried, gone, and any bit of the good Nicole had left. And for whatever reason, I picked up the phone and I rang my sponsor, and she was like, "Where are you?" I'm in Bournemouth. How long would it take to get here? I was like, "Oh, I don't know, about 20 minutes. She was like, "You've got 10, get here." What? So, and that's what I did. And she was strict with me, I've got to say. She was bossy. But everything that she told me to do, I did it. I just did it like that. I stopped all of that fight that I had in me. This, that, and the other. God. Bloody God.
Yeah.
I'm not praying. I'm not doing any of that. All of that stuff had gone because I was broken. I had nothing. And I didn't want to be like that. So I did everything that she told me to do without fail, when she told me to do it, how she told me to do it. And my life completely changed way before I was even halfway through. To be honest with you, just by being broken and going, "Do you know what, I'm done, I'm willing to do anything that it took," my life changed. From that simple willingness. I didn't even have to go through, I had to go through the process for that to continue, but my life had already begun to change, and I felt like it was never going to happen, and yet it did. And from that point, I've taken the steps goodness knows how many times. I've sponsored goodness knows how many women, and a couple of men. I have always had a sponsor. I have done an abundance of service. Service has been such a huge thread throughout my recovery. And I've tried to do the next best thing. I've tried to do the right thing. I relatively quickly got into employment, became a valuable member of society, paying all my own bills and all of that sort of stuff, and just doing the next best thing, with continuously having the foundation of recovery beneath my feet. And it's meant that anything that I've set my mind to do, I've achieved it. Anything. So I have a job, I have a good job, I have a house, I have a car, I have a couple of cars, I have a husband, I have children, I have friends who are absolutely solid in my life, who I can absolutely rely upon, apart from when I'm ill in hospital and they can't be asked to visit me. I'll get over it one day. Move on. The only time I have been near to, because it's been a thread, we've all commented, and I have to say Russ asked me to mention him in the share. The one time that I have been close to having a drink, and I would have what they call a mental blank spot. Russ was socially drinking. We'd gone out for dinner. So Russ is one of our best mates. We've been friends for a long time. We went out for dinner. He was socially drinking. I, in my infinite wisdom of my mental blank spot, thought to have an Irish coffee would be fine. That the hot coffee, not a boiling, but a hot coffee might have burnt the alcohol out of it. I just want it for the taste. And I was this close to having it. I was pretty much the man who had it, if only he could have it in a glass of milk and with a sandwich or whatever it was he ate. I was that person because of Russ. So the message there is obviously stick with the winners. What we've got here is awesome. It's life-changing for many. I mean, I can't express enough how much gratitude I have for the life I've been given as a direct result of what CA has given me and the steps that I've took. It's free for everyone, which is great. We all love a freebie. And if you are not ready for that, I hope you reach your breaking point soon, because what we've got here is amazing. And I thoroughly urge you all to jump on board if you haven't already. And if you have, I thoroughly urge you to go out and help the next person. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nicole.
This brings us to the end of sharing time. Oh, this is exactly the same as the...
Read it.
Okay. If you didn't get a chance to share, please grab someone after the meeting. Let me introduce our group treasurer.
That's everyone then.
My name's Alan, I'm an addict. I'm treasurer for this meeting, and our 7th tradition reminds us that we need to be self-supporting.
It's hot, isn't it?
Background.
The heated on, that's what I